Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to discuss this interesting article that I found. Basically, a group of social scientists claim to have discovered scientific evidence that there are only 4 personality types rather than 16. I will link the article below as well as their YouTube video, which has right now over 100,000 views, but they have disabled comments, so no one can really comment on it. First of all, I wanted to comment on how this experiment was made. Basically, they had an anonymous online survey, which over 1.5 million people participated. Their results basically fell into 4 categories, thus contributing to their claim that there's only 4 personality types. And what they were testing for during this experiment was the 5 personality traits, so the big 5, as you've probably heard. And there's a difference between traits and types. Traits are something that's directly measurable. For example, their trait of openness, you can answer a bunch of questions and that is basically how open you are. There's a direct correlation between the traits that you have and the amount you have it. So say you have high openness and low neuroticism. There's a direct correlation between that and behavior, and thus traits have become very favored in psychology. And then there are types which do not describe your traits, but purportedly claims that it can predict your traits that you are likely to have, as well as the behaviors that you're likely to have. And after many years, the psychology community realized that there wasn't much of a correlation between the types that people would get and their behavior or traits, and thus it basically fell out of favor. However, these 4 types were supposedly found because the people within one type, they share the traits. So for example, one of the types is called average by these people, and these people scored high in neuroticism and high in extroversion and low on openness. So it's basically a trend of how you scored on each of the 5 traits that puts you into a type. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about critical thinking when we read data like this, because as I previously mentioned, it is incredibly difficult to be honest with yourself. And if you're honest with yourself, you can still misjudge yourself. A lot of self-reporting surveys have that issue in my mind. And I did actually take a look at this survey. And to my disappointment, the first question was, you take public transit. And it's a typical survey where for each question you write strongly agree, slightly agree, all the way to strongly disagree. And I'm not sure what they were trying to test for this question. Maybe it's openness, maybe it's extroversion. But the point is, a lot of people don't have access to private transportation. It really depends on where you live, where you work, how your financial situation is. So there's a bunch of other confounding factors that makes this one question slightly dubious in my mind. Like if you're not in a financial situation to afford a car and you work far away, you're forced to take public transportation. Maybe you score higher on extroversion and openness, but really you just need to take it. There are also a few alarming questions. Like one of the questions was something like, being rude and unfriendly is just who I am. Like it wasn't even, I am a rude person. It was, being rude is who I am. Maybe there's a reason why they made the questions like this. Like maybe they were trying to test if the people are proud of their personalities or not. But I really don't think so. I'm pretty sure that question was simply to test for your agreeableness level. But I find it hard to believe that anyone or a large chunk of people who might actually be rude and unfriendly will still click strongly agree for that's just who I am. So with those concerns aside, what I really wanted to discuss was the potential that perhaps these 4 personality clusters are actually fitting in with the 4 socionics quadras. Now, my relationship with socionics is dubious because I'm not actually sure that we do have subconscious functions. So in this video, what I mean by quadras are just people who use the same kind of functions belong in one quadra. For example, all the STPs and all the INFJs who all use NI, FE, SE, and TI all belong in one quadra because they use those 4 kind of functions. And this video is extremely speculative. It's just for fun and for a commentary, and since they didn't allow anyone to comment on their video, you guys can comment on my video. So it's not to be taken super seriously because, like I said, I'm not sure how valid their results were considering the 2 points that I addressed. But assuming that everyone did okay and answered the questions fairly well about themselves, then the clustering into these 4 types I thought could actually relate to the socionics quadras. So I'm going to comment on them now. So one of the groups was said to be average, who scored high on neuroticism and extroversion and low on openness. And I thought this, out of all the 4, would fit best with the delta quadra, who are the NFPs and STJs. I think that NE is neurotic in nature. Like, out of all the functions, NE is open to new ideas and they don't internalize the ideas and concepts, and thus the ideas are not whittled down. So there's nothing really reining them in, not even FE. So I feel like with FE and TI being logically consistent, those 2 functions can rein in the NE by developing some sort of logical consistency as well as social approval. But since the deltas don't have FE and they still have NE, I thought this is why they would score higher on neuroticism. And for scoring high on extroversion, I thought that is perhaps just that there might be more ESTJs and ENFPs than ISTJs and INFPs, or perhaps more extroverted people tended to volunteer for the survey. Interestingly, this group did score low on openness, which I also associate with NE, but perhaps just more STJs took the survey than NFPs. The second group is what they called reserved. These people are said to be emotionally stable, not openly neurotic, which I thought was interesting wording, not openly neurotic. Extroverted, agreeable, and conscientious. So I thought this fit best with the alpha quadra. And FE I generally think of as emotionally stable. No matter what they feel inside, I feel like their emotional display is fairly steady, and therefore I see them as emotionally stable people, even if they are feeling a great deal of tumultuous emotions underneath. Once again, NE is related to neuroticism, but these people are not openly neurotic, suggesting that the FE and or TI is reining that in. Once again, extroversion is a theme, suggesting there's probably just more extroverts than introverts in the world, or more extroverts are likely to take this test. Agreeableness, once again, you know what I'm gonna say. I think of that as FE, especially added with NE. NE being generally very open to new ideas and new inputs. NE is very unlikely to shut any ideas down for being unrealistic. NE is just hearing everyone out. And thus, combined with FE, I think of as like a very agreeable person. And conscientiousness, I think of as a gravitation towards routine as well as the finer details. A person who can do that tends to be conscientious in my mind, and thus I related that to introverted sensing, which the alpha quadra also does have. Thirdly, there are the role model category, who are said to be low in neuroticism and high in everything else. And they're also said to be good leaders, dependable, and open to new ideas. So immediately I thought of the beta quadra. So low neuroticism I think of as NI and SE, since that axis is more tied to physical reality instead of a more personalized, ephemeral reality that's based on your own past and based on all the ideas that there are. I think of extroverted sensing as a function that tethers everything down to what is actually concretely real. The good leaders thing, once again, I think sometimes that's related to TE, but in terms of human leadership, that's definitely an FE thing, and especially with the singular vision and perception that is NI, making these people very certain about their future vision, certain about where they want to lead people to, I think of the betas as potentially good leaders. Once again, scoring high on extroversion, that is a theme throughout this entire experiment, and I think it's because, they didn't pick 20 random people out of the phone book. So they're not gonna maybe get an accurate representation of how many introverts and extroverts there really are. So maybe extroverts are more likely to do this survey and thus are getting more extroverts, or maybe there are actually more extroverts. We'll never know. And dependable, I'm not sure about that one, what that has to do with personality type, but they found that to cluster in this type, so that's interesting. And open to new ideas. I do think that good leaders have to be open to new ideas, and I can definitely see ENFJ or INFJ asking the room for their input. Finally, we have the last personality type as named by the social scientists, and they actually named this self-centered, which I find to be like a big mistake, or like, why would you name something like that? And people are going to try to claw their way out of this personality type. And I have thought that this type sounded most like the gammas, who are the SFPs and the NTJs. This group is said to be, once again, high in extroversion. So you saw that all 4 personality types are extroverted, which is not true when you look at reality. So they scored below average on openness, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. Once again, I think conscientiousness is somewhat related to SI, and the Gamma Quadra does not have any SI. Openness, I tend to not think of that as an NI thing. They tend to be very entrenched into their own tunnel vision, their own singular perspective that they're very sure about. Now, I think the betas had openness because they also have FE, so they have to be socially open at least. But the gammas do not have FE, they have FI, so I think they're pretty much free to just do whatever they want and perceive however they want. And agreeableness, once again, having a bunch of NTJs answering in the survey, maybe they got a bit lower in agreeableness. And I do think that at the end of the day, FI is less agreeable than FE, and FI is part of the Gamma Quadra. So this kind of made sense to me. Yeah, so not much else to say here. Definitely not really trying to present my own theory, just thought this article was interesting and wanted to comment on it. And just a brief commentary on how we shouldn't believe everything we hear, just because a few scientists worked on this. I'm sure they're very well educated and they worked hard on this, but there are always questions to be asked in these situations. I am really eager to hear what you guys might think about the theory of 4 personalities, what you think of these people's video and article. So please let me know your thoughts below in the comments. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.